A very lovely evening to everyone from my little corner of the world in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am Finn Bell, poet and podcaster, and your favorite host of this, our wonderful Poets Lighthouse. Joining me today is Marjorie Evasco. Marjorie is a Southeast Asia Writers Awardee for the Philippines, given by the Royal Family of Thailand and the National Commissions for Culture and the Arts, Ani ng Dangal 2011 awardee. 5 of her books have won the Manila Critics Circle National Book Awards for poetry, for oral history, for biography, and for the arts. Her poetry books in English with Spanish translations by Latin American poets are Skin of Water and Fishes of Light, Peces de Luz, co-authored by Cuban poet Alex Fleites. In 1986, Marjorie was Regional Fellow for Poetry of the University of the Philippines Likhaan Center for Creative Writing. Her National Writing Workshop fellowships were from Silliman University in 1976 and the University of the Philippines in 1978. She served as director of the Bienvenido and Santos Creative Writing Center of De La Salle University, Manila. In the same university, she was also appointed to the Society of University Fellows and became writer in residence. As cultural advocate for literary development in the Visayas and Mindanao, particularly in creative writing in Binisaya, she had served in the creative writing workshops in Dumaguete, Tagbilaran, Ilagan, Bacolod, Iloilo, and Davao. In 2017, she edited the anthology of memoirs of growing up Boholano called The Bohol We Love, where she also translated memoirs, poems, and folk songs in Binisaya into English. Marjorie is Professor Emeritus of Literature and University Fellow at De La Salle University, Manila. Since 2019 until now, she is serving the appointment as Writer in Residence of the university, where she is also teaching literature in its graduate school. Marge, welcome to our show. It is a true honor to have you here.
Thank you very much, Finn Bell. Thank you for that introduction. And greetings to everyone of your viewers.
Thank you so much.
Greetings from Manila.
Greetings from Manila, absolutely. It is pretty early there, so thank you so much, absolutely, for joining us. So I'm going to go right into our first question. Marge, in introducing writing to us as an art form, you beautifully stated how the practice of writing puts the practitioner in touch with her impetus for reciprocal creation, as poet Patty Ann Rogers phrased it. I truly connect to that, and I incorporate that into my own daily practice. Can you explain a little more to our viewers the idea behind this?
Well, it actually begins, I think, with developing the skill of being quiet in order to listen. And so I think of all my skills, listening is my best skill. I'm not very good at talking, really, but listening, yes. And being still has it creates a space by which you can not only hear what you are looking at or paying attention to or attending to, but it also makes you hear the words come into your ear. Your mind's ear, of course, and when the words begin ringing in your ear, that is a beautiful sign that things are stirring up. I don't write right away because I'm really more a reader and a listener, and so it takes me a long time to come to really compose. So most of the time, my daily practice, like you, is to write in my journal, and many of my observations where I do not try to impose myself. I just write very, very sharp descriptions of what I was listening to or looking at or tasting. So it's maybe a way of being in the body, embodying what you are experiencing and saying, yes, I am paying attention to it. So I think that kind of reciprocity with the world is also a way of being in the world, the kind that I know anyway. So, yeah,
That is
that's the
beautiful. Yeah, that
thank you.
reciprocity with the world. I like that idea, and paying as much attention in your writing practice to having the time for observation and not just the automatic writing. That's powerful. Just making that statement and sharing that practice with us. That I think that personally would be useful for me. I'd love to continue this conversation without any break. But unfortunately, folks, we have to go on a very short break. But when we return, we will learn more about our guest. We return now from our break. And with us gracing our virtual studio is a figure much admired and well respected, not only in the Philippines, but the global community. Professor Emeritus of Literature at De La Salle University, Manila, Marjorie Evasco. Marge, I would love for you to be so kind, oblige us, and would you share perhaps one or two of your beautiful poetry with us?
Okay, I will read a new poem, relatively new, entitled "Shadow Mothers." After Angela Silva's cyanotype prints and artist's album in Not Another Mother and Child exhibit, Orange Project. In monochrome, the mother and child images from old family photo albums become something else. Memory retrieved as shadows, soft as forget-me-nots, blooming in a corner of a garden a mother must have loved. In those mid-mornings when she was young and the children were just learning to say their first syllables. Mama, Yaya. It was sweet language to the ear whenever she was around to hear it. The child recognizing two faces, constant sentinels of the daily round of feeding, washing, cleaning, pacifying, and humming songs to sleep by. Her arms ached, holding close a sleepy child, now quietly brought to bed to drift dream like the silver dragonflies hovering above the lilies. She was a mother's double, her lap a soft cushion, her breasts smelling of sun and sweat of earth, unlike the bosom, perfumed with soap, talc, and something else. From distant gardens, the grown-up child learned to name lavender, wisteria, clematis, hydrangeas. She was the one to whom a child would turn because she was there, ubiquitous as the scent of sugar planted in the great haciendas, where the rest of her kindred toiled. Was she shadow mother, or the one indelibly printed onto a child's sentient body? You say of cyanotypes, blue is also the color of the ocean, of distance and longing. Our memories of all our mothers taste of salt water, relentless waves of beckoning blue-black seas.
The gorgeous language in that. So, in much of your poetry, Marge, I have had the pleasure of reading. The images that you call forth are so exquisite. These images are often paired with or followed by contemplations of things that you have experienced. Do you find that nature or even art, visual or otherwise, provides a means to process and express your response to events or emotions or stimuli?
Yes, I live with art and I live with nature, or try to be in it and with it. And so much of my poetry, because I grew up in Bohol, which is a
Mhm.
lovely island in the
Yes.
Visayas, people always wondered or even asked me, where does it come from? And I said, well, maybe because the sea is so near,
Mm.
and the rhythms of the waves, they come into your ear without you trying so hard, no?
Yes.
Because it's there. The presence of the sea is there. The presence of the mountains and the trees are also very important to me. When I was growing up, my father planted many trees in Maribohok. That's
Mhm.
the ancestral place in my father's family. And we would go there every weekend, and he would bring some saplings for him to plant, and we would be with him also planting, because he was a wood craftsman. And so, I don't think I saw any difference between working with the hands and working with the mind. I think both are very, very good ways of paying attention to the world.
Oh yes, yes, I see that connection there, and that's beautiful. That those were things that were interwoven into just. I picture such an idyllic childhood that that just had this rhythm that fed into how you are creatively. I understand that you have another poem that a newer poem as well that you would love to share, and we would love to listen to it.
Yeah, actually, it's an older poem.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, yeah, and it's titled Elemental.
One.
Elemental. There is a season to this ripening. The way sap of tree rises to fulfill, fruit of the topmost branch, or the motion of jasmine climbing trellises to show off a single blossom at new moon tide. In my garden, bamboos arch over patch of grass, river stones, upturned earth. Alone where weeds grow wildest, I think how the golden skin of mango broke between your teeth. How you swallowed the seamless sky over Sikihor, your body becoming an entire land I could intimate black moons from. Taste of earth, rush of river songs, smell of air before rain, spray of flowers with strange names. Yes, there is reason for this ripening. You are golden by my tongue.
Bravo, wonderful. So, Marge, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, but you write poetry in English as well as in your mother tongue, Bolanong Binisaya,
Yes.
Boholano Visayan. What connection in creativity or in your own personal history is tapped when you do so?
Well, when I hear the words in my head in Binisaya, I I heed that call and I write the poem in Binisaya. Sometimes it happens like that, and I don't say, "Well, I'm supposed to write it in English first so that more people can read it in the world." But in the Philippines, most people read in Binisaya. There are more people reading in Binisaya or in Tagalog, so I like that fact. And
Yes,
when I learned how to write in Binisaya, because I had to deprogram my English, my imagination was talking in English and
yes.
dreaming in English. And in 1992 or 91, I went to Hawthornden Castle, and I was with four other British and American writers, and they were reading poetry every night. And I said, "Why do they write that fast?" And I am a turtle poet, as I call myself. So, and I realized that maybe it was because it was their mother tongue, and I resolved at that point that I would relearn my mother tongue,
Mm.
and I first did that by reading the tradition. I read everything I could find of Cebuano literature, because Binisaya literature is very rich and very deep and quite old. No? So even in the oral tradition, because the oral tradition is still alive. So
Yes.
yeah, it does something to me. It's different in my mind, and I think it's more visceral when I write in Binisaya, Boholano Binisaya.
I have found that same thing happened to me. Surprisingly, over this past year of being in lockdown, I have connected with trying to. I'm not at all fluent in my mother's mother tongue, but I have been revisiting it, and it has unlocked something very powerful, very hearkening back to a history and a childhood that I otherwise would have not been able to access other in English. So yes, there is some definite power to explore going into that. So I'm going to talk about I was going through your poetry, and I came across one that I just truly loved, and I believe it's called Vesak 2020 for Sean Tan Mansukami.
Mansukan. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were the lines. This morning I spied a yellow vented warbler pecking at the frayed edges of the oldest flag. And then in the next stanza there was, I imagine her beak receiving filaments of bright red, blue, green, and gold, weaving each into the twigs and straw, a sheltering circle of prayer fragments. Beautiful language again. So reading these lines was very nourishing to me. It was almost like you were intoning a prayer in itself. And like prayers may sometimes do, does writing these poems provide some enlightening answers to questions that you may be unconsciously asking?
Well, every poem I think is an exploration of a question that you are dealing with, or a wonderment. So it's a state of being where you are open to whatever whisperings there would be, and I was really just literally I was watching that bird and it was really taking the strands from the prayer flags that are hanging in my garden, and I would follow its flight, and I have a MacArthur palm in my
Mm.
garden, and it would go up there, and I would hear twitterings. No? So I went and took a picture of that nest, but yeah, but the words were given in a way. It's like it's given already, and all you have to do is maybe take down notes and make sure that it is as faithful as the experience. Although of course there's some transformation, because it's already there. It doesn't have to have me in order
Yes.
to happen. But because I found it beautiful, and I paid attention to it, paying attention maybe first without words is the prayer, and then
I like
and
that.
then
I
writing
love
it
that.
down is making my own prayer to the world. So it's a conversation, I think, a
Mm.
dialogue, one of the ways by which we know our place, no, in this world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you were saying given, the words were given. Were they given by the experience? Is that what you meant? Can you Can you elaborate on that further?
Yes, well, I'm remembering another poem now where it's in the anthology called Agam,
Mhm.
the Filipino narratives of uncertainty and climate change, and we were given prompts, just black and white photographs, very beautiful photographs
Mhm.
of people who, in one way or another, had experienced climate emergencies.
Yes.
And when I saw and looked at the photo, we were not given the names. We were not told what they were. So we were free with our imagination. The
Mhm.
only thing given was a certain list of jargon that we were not
I
supposed to
see.
use. And I was looking at the man in front of me in that photograph, and I could hear him talk in Binisaya. I could not have written it in English, and so because Binisaya is a heart language as well as
Yes.
a as maybe an intestinal language, the kind of language where you feel it with your body.
Exactly. I
um,
love that.
I, I
Intestinal.
just I
Yes.
just wrote it down first. I thought I listened to, or I felt I listened to a voice, a male voice. And I just wrote it all down without putting any form. So
Uh-huh.
it's a narrative poem, a very, actually quite a long one. I was surprised when I was finally done. It felt almost like being in a trance. And then I said, okay, now it's done, it's out. And I spent about 2 weeks just doing the line cuts, uh, polishing it, because I to a fault, I do a lot of revision. In fact, somebody has to hold my hand and say, enough, that's enough, let it go. So yes, that's the kind of listening. I listen to the way the cadence of the voice falls in the ear. And
Mhm.
even if it were not, my a voice I was listening to, when I reread my poems, I am I'm very conscious, and I attend to the music, the
Mhm.
musicality of it. So um, sometimes some people say it's too finished, and so now I'm learning how to let go a little bit, to take a lot of risks with music. But yeah, maybe it's like playing jazz.
I can truly appreciate and respect you saying that these things that you're doing as part of your your process where things are not automatically written down the page. I'm seeing how it was very curious to me when I had seen that mention of a turtle poet or turtle poetry, and in reference to you, and I can completely relate with that. I spend so much more time with the observation, with everything that the world or what the experience is telling me and processing it. I'm spending a lot of it and kind of feeling like I'm giving birth to the poem at the end of this process of having this incubating period. So I thought that was truly beautiful that you said that. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's still going about it at this wonderful. The way I like to phrase it, and now I think you'll completely understand, is those moments in between the heartbeats. I
Yes.
feel that you have to kind of listen in between them and listen to the cues that you're being given. So that was just I'm gonna take a course from you.
Wonderful.
I need
No,
to.
I'm learning from you. And in between the heartbeats is the silence, isn't it?
Yes,
Without which you cannot hear the words or the
yes,
sounds. So
yes.
yeah.
Wonderful, exactly. Um, so not only have we been seeing the emergence of important women voices in poetry recently, or in the last, several years, but also I feel a stronger presence of yet to be discovered and marginalized women poets, voices being, coming to the forefront. What do you think this means for our poetry landscape, having this happen?
Well, in the Philippines, since I think the 90s,
Mhm.
we have been advocating for writing in our native or our Philippine languages. And so even in, let's say, Western Visayas, where they have three languages, we have Hiligaynon, Akyanon, and Kinaraya. The great writer, the late Leoncio Derriada, he called it cultural engineering, because he was saying to the younger and younger poets and writers, write in your mother tongue, because you need to write for your people. And I think that kind of ethos is growing. In fact, in Bicol, for example, I would say that there was a resurgence of literature in the language when the language was about to, to fall into oblivion among
Yes.
the young people. But they have a movement there where they write in Bicolano. There are many languages, of course, and dialects in Bicol. What I know is from the Visayas, and Binisaya is a very rich culture, and because it covers the Visayas and Mindanao, so two-thirds of the country. And in Mindanao, especially, there is a mix of these languages. And so I've been meeting some of the younger writers who are writing in our mother tongues. And that's a very, very happy thing. In the IAS workshop in Bacolod, for example, I have met a wonderful fiction writer from the Blaan tribe, the indigenous peoples. They have their own writers already, and they are writing not only in their indigenous language, but also in Filipino and English. So many of us who are writing in the Philippines are multilingual.
Yes.
I shift between three languages, and then when I sit in the workshop in IAS, there are 5 languages there that we are dealing with.
That's
So
exciting.
sometimes the story is in Filipino, sometimes it is in Hiligaynon, sometimes it is in Binisaya. And so if you're a reader in all these traditions, the discussion is very, very exciting, especially because you're hearing it from the young. And that's the
Yes.
future of literature.
It is. That is super exciting. And this is coming from me, having lived in the Philippines in the 80s, and there was still very much a love of westernized culture, the colonial mentality, where I only experienced a punctuation or a shift in that when I moved from, my pre-college life, moving from there to being in the University of the Philippines, total shift where it was a emphasis on all things Tagalog, all things patriotic, all things Philippines, and I really loved that. But that was a microcosm within the whole of this loving of a culture that was other than Filipino. So seeing this, and just like you, I am experiencing all these younger emerging Filipino, Southeast Asian, other culture writers writing in their own beautiful language. I completely adore that. I completely adore that. Um, I wanted to finish off with one last question for you, Marge. And by the way, thank you so much. This has been an enlightening experience. So my last question, Marge, is um, it's without a doubt, that you would top the list for many aspiring and established poets alike, myself included, as a beacon of excellence in the literary arts. If you could, we would love for you to pass on to our listeners the poets who had inspired your practice and those who we should watch out for who are up and coming.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd like to first name my mentor in poetry, the national artist for literature in the Philippines, Edith El Tiempo. I studied under her after I took a workshop in 1976, and since many of my initial works failed, I said, this is what I'm going to learn because it's so difficult. And so, yeah, she did patiently coach me, guide me, and nurtured me in the craft. Very unremitting eye, also critical
Mhm.
eye. She also taught me how to do that for myself, because he said, workshops are a luxury. You have to be a critical reader also of
Yes.
your own work when you revise. And I I also have another teacher. She's also a poet, Merly Alunan. I met her in college even before Edith Tiempo, and she was the one who took me by the scruff of my neck and said, "You go to Siliman and learn poetry there, or learn how to write there." And so the two of them would be very important figures in my growing as a writer.
Mhm.
But because the formal training in university is also still American British heavy.
Yes.
I have come to love many American writers, aside from Emily Dickinson, of course. No, I love Jane Hirschfield and Terry Tempest Williams and Joy Harjo, and many poets all around the world. When I was introduced to Latin American literature, I also loved many of them. No? In fact, maybe my Spanish grew because of my love for them. No? So, and I met many of them also in person when I went to Nicaragua and
So lovely.
Colombia. No? So, Yaconda Belli and Claribel Alegria.
Mhm.
And many of the older writers, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. No? So,
Yes, yes.
yeah, the feminists that I read whose poetry spoke to me, Adrienne Rich, Audre Lorde. No? So that kind of tradition of women writing, and women who were actively involved in their communities and societies,
Mhm.
that kind of poetry appeals to me because I think it's not only aware of the world, it's very much awake to its possibilities of redemption from
Yes.
the cruelties that we inflict upon each other and the planet. Yeah, we have committed many sins
Yes.
to each other and to the world. So yeah, I like their writing, and I'm discovering many new people to read, no? And rediscovering them. Like I'm
Rediscover.
rereading the complete works of Denise Levertov. I've always loved her, but I'm paying attention to her poetry this year. That's my project. um, yeah. So
And rereading can be a whole new discovery if you give some time in between it. It is almost like discovering and deciding on your relationship with. I know for sure, not a female poet, but one of my favorite poets who is South American is Neruda. I know
yes.
that's for a lot of people. My relationship with Neruda has changed as I have matured and began to to question the timbre of his poetry and the meaning behind it, and not being able really to separate honestly the the man from the poetry itself. So yeah, I completely understand that. Thank you so much for being here, Marge, at the Poets Lighthouse. Poets Lighthouse faithful listeners, this was a dream that I can now tick off my bucket list to sit down with one of my biggest poetry inspirations, the gracious and wise Marjorie Evasco. Please do find out more about Marge, her writings, her teachings, and projects that she is passionate about by visiting her website, www.marjorie-evasco.com. Please continue to support all of our unique and exciting programming by the Poetry Global Network by following us on Instagram at PGN Official and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Please have a fantastic weekend.